It's week 1 in the NFL season.
And fantasy football is back.
Will Jimmy Graham make you want to dunk the ball over the goalpost against the Falcons?
Will Chip Kelly and the Eagles offense resume flight against a retooled Jaguars D?
Who's in more trouble, Cam Newton against the Buccaneers or you for starting him?
And will Peyton Manning and the Broncos stampede over his former team and your opponent?
All these questions and more answered on today's Fantasy War Room Live.
Come and get it!
And welcome to the Fantasy War Room Live on SB Nation. I'm Matt Ufford, joined as always by my co-champion, co-host, co-wit, Nick Stevens.
I am glad to be your champion, Matt Ufford.
We should probably mention that the NFL season starts tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow, or maybe it's tonight, or maybe it was yesterday when you watch this. But for now, it starts tomorrow. Can you believe your Seahawks? Your Seahawks just finished putting the finishing touches of lambasting the Denver Broncos, and we're like, well, man, it's gonna be so long till there's football again. It's here. It's back.
It was a very long time. That was a long wait. And it's good to be back. I'm glad to be talking about fantasy football once again. We are going to get into rankings by position. You've got the rankings all set up. We're going to discuss every position in detail. We've also saved the end of the show to answer some of your questions you've asked on Twitter and on this webpage if you happen to be watching live. And of course, if you're watching the replay or listening to us in podcast form, welcome. Please excuse anything we say about the Seattle-Green Bay game if we happen to be wrong about that and you're listening to it after the game.
Actually, we're just going to go ahead and edit it so that everything we say is right. So sorry if you're watching it because we can't fix that. However, on the podcast, man, are we going to sound amazing.
You feeling good? Are you feeling good going into week 1? You like your teams?
Man, it's like I'm suffering from double gridiron excitement because I'm so excited for the regular season, for the football season to be back. But of course, with that comes the return of fantasy football season as well. And usually at the top of the show, I like to give out one little piece of advice, one little note. And this being week 1, all I can say to people is, just as my 8th grade math teacher used to say, kiss it. Keep it simple, stupid. You just drafted your team. Don't go looking to pick up anyone off waivers because we or someone else may say it's a good idea or panic because of your matchup. Take the guys you planned on starting in the first place, start them, stick with them. It's only the first week.
Of course, I totally agree. I actually just shot another fantasy football show today, something called Keepers, also available to watch on SB Nation. That'll be out tomorrow, and I say exactly the same thing, start your stars. However, there are lots of discussions to be had about your wide receiver 2, your flex position, your wide receiver 3 if you've got a league like that. So that being said, or God forbid, if you have a 2-quarterback league, your second quarterback.
I will never understand why people need to, I mean, honestly, having a 2-quarterback league is like having a 2-wife house. Sounds like a great idea, just going to lead to trouble.
That's a 3-hour discussion for another show. Let's go ahead and get into quarterback rankings. We'll start it off with the signal callers. You've got, these are, by the way, these aren't anybody's rankings but Nick Stevens's, and we're going to discuss where Nick has people. I don't think that there's any argument about Peyton Manning versus Indianapolis or Drew Brees at Atlanta. Those are fantastic quarterbacks going up against shoddy defenses.
Absolutely.
I think that you might get a little bit of pushback on Jay Cutler against Buffalo. That's a big step up for the Bears.
It is a big step up for him. Mind you, you did not give out the disclaimer or caveat that I was actually in the bathtub that I used to make my bathtub gin when I put together these rankins. So
you were swimming in gin.
I was literally swimming in gin. I was in a cold tub of gin, Hey, can't make the club if you're not, in the tub. Well, personally, the Buffalo pass defense, nothing about Stephon Gilmore versus Brandon Marshall or Alshon Jeffrey to me says, oh no, I'm afraid. The Buffalo defense was so unimpressive, and I know a preseason does not a regular season make, but they were so unimpressive in the preseason that they lost.
Kiki Alonso.
Yeah, they lost Kiki Alonso for the season, and they also lost Jairus Byrd, their best player in the secondary, to New Orleans, and now they're up against the two of maybe the 10 best wide receivers in football at the same time on the road.
Worth noting also that Alonso's as a rookie, was already one of the better coverage linebackers in the NFL, and Martellus Bennett is a more than capable tight end that could create some problems for Buffalo as well. And also the architect of that defense, Mike Pettin, now coaches elsewhere.
And now you're going to tell me that Matt Forte going out into coverage against that crazy linebacker from New England that we lost and they picked up, you know what his name is, 51, I forgot.
I stopped listening to you a second ago, so I missed that.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll buy you on Jay Cutler. I don't think I'd put him so high as number 3, but I think he's definitely a very good start this week.
I'm bullish.
I've got a little question with number 4, too. Matt Ryan versus New Orleans. New Orleans has a pretty good pass defense.
This may be a case of the Hard Knocks effect.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm thinking I love what I saw. I know they're going to come out gunslinging. The only way that the Falcons are going to be able to keep up with anyone this year, let alone actually win football games, is by throwing. There is nothing about the Steven Jackson experiment that's going to work out for anybody in fantasy or reality.
We tried that experiment last year, and we know that it didn't work.
It blew up all over.
Well, sometimes 30-year-old running backs, as they get older, get better, right? Yeah, so Matt Ryan, I don't love at number 4. I think that you're off there. I do like your number 5, Tony Romo, up against San Francisco defense, missing Aldon Smith, of course, missing Navarro Bowman and coverage, a fantastic linebacker. And the Niners were just like, with the exception of adding Jimmy Ward, really haven't done much to boost their secondary.
Brutal offseason.
I think you're looking at a great day for Tony Romo. I think the Dallas O-line should be able to do, with the exception of Justin Smith. Justin Smith versus the Cowboys left tackle, I think, will be a big matchup. If you get Romo enough time to throw, Des Bryant, Terrence Williams, Tony, all going to have great days.
Yeah, and just to sort of validate or discuss why a few of the other people fell where they did in the 20, and please feel free to take me to task in whatever medium, both digital or actual, for forgetting to put Colin Kaepernick in the top 20. Because
let's finish out the top 10 here with Aaron Rodgers at 9. Of course, is playing at Seattle.
Bold choice, but I'm okay with that. You don't get a top 5 ranking even if you're a top 5 quarterback when you go to Seattle.
It's totally fair. That it should be worth noting too that the Packers are rolling out a new center playing in CenturyLink. That's going to be a couple false starts. Some longer like 1st and 15s that they're looking at, and I think that if I happened to draft Aaron Rodgers with my 2nd pick, and then let's say Jay Cutler fell to me in the 7th or 8th round, I'm not sure I could totally recommend Week 1 starting Jay Cutler over Aaron Rodgers.
I'm not sure any of us also saw, even though I'm sure there's a lot of Hail Mary revenge on the mind of Aaron Rodgers, going into the hornet's nest filled with angry, hungry bears that is Quest Field. Or is that what that's called? CenturyLink.
The Clink, if you will.
The Clink. Going into the home of the 12th man and trying to get Hail Mary revenge. A place you were sacked 7 times in the first half, but 2 years ago.
Granted, Chris Clemens who got most of those sacks, moved on to Jacksonville, but he's been replaced by equally capable.
Another very angry, tough human being.
And of course, that was a game in which the Packers only scored 12 points. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. And I have a hard time building a rational argument against it, except for we just opened the show by saying start your stars.
I know, but this is the week you grab. This might be the week you grab Ryan Tannehill or Josh McCown.
No, stop.
Come on.
Stop. Listen, I threw out a very reasonable thing by saying Jay Cutler over Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Let's not get crazy with Ryan Tannehill. Come on now.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Last year, you're looking at a guy who won this fantasy trophy for having the brass footballs to start Kirk Cousins over Drew Brees in Week 16 last year.
I don't think I encouraged you. I started Andy Dalton over Drew Brees in Week 16. Also won me a championship.
See? Brass footballs, man.
That's Week 16. This is Week 1.
All right.
Let's move on to the second half of those quarterbacks. Russell Wilson leads things off with number 11. I think he's going to do better than top 11 this week. I think that
I have him as
we're going to
riser.
see this is going to be the beginning of a new era of Russell Wilson. I recognize that I am biased pro Seattle. That's something that everybody has to live with, including myself. But I do think that we're going to see, because the Seahawks defense, almost out of necessity, but pure regression, will have to take a step back this year. They're just not going to be as historically good as they were last year. to compensate for that, you're going to see the Seahawks offense step up, and that's going to be Russell Wilson's job.
New Era, that also strikes me as a great name for an athletic company if you're ever getting into investing or looking for long-term growth outside of sports.
Absolutely.
Just saying it, I also think Russell Wilson could possibly crack the top 10 this week. I put Ryan Tannehill at 14. I don't really have any regrets around that just because I have a feeling that though this is the now Darrelle Revis-enabled New England Patriots defense and secondary that he's going up against. Until the Patriots can show me or anybody else that they can stop the tight end, I see Lamar Miller and especially Charles Clay giving them a hard time out of the backfield. Once again, it's just a weakness of theirs.
I don't know about Ryan Tannehill at 14. Year. Certainly not ahead of like Andy Dalton. But one thing that I am concerned about there with Ryan Tannehill going up against New England, and by say concerned, I mean concerned for you, it's going to be around 90 degrees, humid, chance of thunderstorms. This is the sort of thing where the Patriots having their camp up in New England, obviously, are going to be, they're just not going to be as conditioned for the weather as the Dolphins are going to be. And so you can see, I could see a tired Patriots defense giving up some points towards the end of the game.
Right, because it was 40s and brisk all summer up in New England. There's been so much talk about that. Week 1, pretty much, here's the forecast. Hot across America. It's been hot everywhere. I think it's a bigger difference when you're cold in November and you have to go down to Miami and all of a sudden you go from wearing Uggs on purpose and by accident because Brady gave them to you to the heat of Miami. That makes a bigger difference. Right now, it's 90 and humid everywhere. It's a jungle all over the East Coast. Hey. Just saying. Hey, I ain't no Storm Field or nothing or Sam Champion, but, you know.
All right.
Okay?
So we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. How about, here's an interesting one, Josh McCown versus Carolina. I don't want to have a halo effect from last year's 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions with the Bears, but because throughout his career he hasn't been that impressive, and the Tampa Bay does have a different offense. But I don't have that many negative feelings about Josh McCown this year. I think that he's a perfectly fine spot start for bye weeks. I think he's an okay QB2 to have.
He would be perfect. Now, if I have him ranked at number 15, obviously I'm looking at him in a 12-team league as probably one of the better QB2s that would be available to you this week. And I love the fact that Lovie Smith gave him exactly what he thrived with in Chicago: 2 6'5" receivers. Perfect.
All right, and let's wrap up some quarterback discussion towards the bottom here. Joe Flacco versus Cincinnati, that's a very good defense. He got him 17, and Andy Dalton at Baltimore, also a very good defense. These are two very unreliable, unpredictable quarterbacks where sometimes they're going to come through and give you something fantastic. With Flacco, even a little bit more unreliable. I would put Dalton ahead of Flacco on this one. I think that Dalton you can actually sometimes rely on. Flacco I would never want to rely on.
Well, I'm not going to put too much stock in the fact that the Bengals are talking about Darqueze Dennard being the steal of the draft and the best cornerback they've seen come out of college in years with the most fluid hips and the best shutdown moves. Nor am I going to put too much stock into the Kubiak effect. Sounds like a movie we all probably heard of coming out of Sundance, but apparently he's actually a little bit of a QB whisperer. He's got Torrey Smith running a new route tree. They're going to expand his offense now, and Bernard Pierce is playing this week, and I actually think Bernard Pierce is probably the better back for the Baltimore offense.
That's interesting. I'd like to rewind to the part where you said that Gary Kubiak was a quarterback whisperer. He's the same one that coached Matt Schaub for several years, yes?
Listen, don't you go blaming anyone for Matt Schaub. Matt Schaub be it, Matt Schaub does.
All right.
How dare you, sir? Didn't Kubiak go through enough last year?
He really
How
did.
Dare you?
He really did.
Look what he did. Look what he did to Kubiak.
He almost killed him.
Weren't you the guy out on Gary Kubiak's Matt Schaub's lawn last year?
No, I did not do that.
Ugh, slander, I tell you. Slander. Oh, and also, I put Chad Henne at 19. Again, obviously you're not starting him over Aaron Rodgers the way I said you would consider Cutler over Aaron Rodgers or something so completely outrageous. All I can say is this. Philadelphia has a horrible pass defense. It hasn't gotten that much better. And obviously the Eagles are going to score. He's going to throw the ball over 40 times. You could do worse than his 307 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. It's not bad. It's not the best.
But it's week 1. You're not that desperate. Just something fun to talk about.
I had to fill out the 20. Hey, whatever.
Let's move on to running backs. And this one gets a little bit more interesting because we got a little bit more depth to position. Number 1, LaShawn McCoy. I think that I might actually put a little asterisk
Well,
on Jamal Charles at number 2.
There's always a chance with an asterisk.
As much as I love Jamal Charles for having won me a championship last year, I will say that I'm very, very concerned about the Kansas City offensive line. Lost Brandon Albert, lost 2 of their guards. They've got a very weak offensive line this year, and it's not going to stop Charles from catching another 70 balls. But I don't know about the Chiefs' running game this year.
How about the fact that maybe poor Jamal Charles may have just gotten flat out run into the ground last year? And this could be one of those years. Now, I know he sadly missed a year with the ACL a couple years back. And, you know, it's an Andy Reid offense, so they shouldn't necessarily regress. But there's nothing about what they did in the offseason. They lost McCluster. You got Dwayne Bowe suspended for the first game. This kid Travis Kelce is coming in as the tight end. He could be boom or bust.
Kelsey lately.
I like Kelce. You know,
yeah, sure.
Or Kelso, like the beer. Everything about it says just wait. There's a whole lot of wait and see about their offense. Now they gave Alex Smith all this money too. I'm not buying into it. I'm a little nervous about Charles as well.
So listen. You're not going to sit Jamal Charles week 1. This is simply just a thought experiment. Let's roll down the list. Matt Forte versus Buffalo, Monte Ball versus Indianapolis, Adrian Peterson versus St. Louis. Mm-hmm. A little bit intriguing because of that terrifying front 4 of St. Louis, and of course James Laurinaitis, also very capable middle linebacker. So maybe a little bit of warrior there. I think that Marshawn Lynch going up against Green Bay, missing B.J. Raji out for the season. Weak inside linebackers. I think Marshawn Lynch is going to have a very good day, especially since he's fresh going into the season. And Frank Gore, again, old Dallas defensive line, terrible. So Frank Gore is going to have a good day too, sure. We start getting interesting, I think, around 9-10, Andre Ellington. I like him a lot this year. 10, Arian Foster. This is going to be a great litmus test. The Washington Redskins defense. Sorry, did I say that? I apologize for that filthy word I just said. The Washington football team's defense.
The Washington football defense.
Is not anything that I would write home about unless it was to say, this thing's terrible, Mom. So yes, I think that this is going to be an excellent opportunity to see what Arian Foster can do on a good week.
And with his repaired back, now we got Bill O'Brien running the offense. Is it the same sort of zone blocking friendly offense that Kubiak had down there, of course, when he was so good with the zone blocking schemes? Foster is a wild card, but if he's up to snuff and they're home against Washington, he should be able to crack the top 10 and be a worthy RB1, teetering on 1-2. He's an RB 1.5 to me.
Houston versus Washington is one of the games that I'm most interested in week 1 because there's so much that I want to know. The Redskins also have transferred away from the zone blocking to man blocking scheme, and they've added weapons. Jordan Reed's finally healthy, added Deshaun Jackson. The Redskins have a potentially explosive offense, but I don't really know what to expect from that line and Robert Griffin III. On the other side of the ball, you've got the Houston Texans defense, and is J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney going to be enough to make the entire defense good? And what about the offense? Is Ryan Fitzpatrick going to have enough to work with? I had so many question marks about both those teams that I just want to know more about them.
I wish sports bars would actually, like when you walk into a sports bar and you're looking for your game, I wish there would be a way that instead of just sort of putting games on in arbitrary spots depending on what the fan bases are, I wish they would just divide the bar in half. They would just have written in tape on the wall, good games, and then on the other side, games you're only interested in because of fantasy football. This game, 100%, unless you're from Houston or Washington, D.C., is a fantasy interest-only game.
I would also be interested in a third room, a cellar that all the Steelers fans could stay in.
Yeah, the problem is, though, there would be a lot of smoke and the smell of garlic bread coming from there.
All right, let's move to that bottom half of your top 20 running backs. Ryan Matthews at Arizona. Again, the Arizona Cardinals defense, one of the best in the league last year, but big steps backward in the offseason. The loss of Darrell Washington hurts them very badly. Darnell Dockett for the season.
Though replaced by Tommy Kelly, so it's 75% of Darnell Dockett, if you will.
On a good day. And then, of course, Ryan Matthews is going to be playing first 2 downs. Danny Woodhead comes on to catch passes on 3rd down.
And a sneaky good season last year for Danny Woodhead. We all knew he did well, but if you look at it, like 6 receiving
especially
touchdowns,
if you had even
touchdowns.
like half a point PPR.
Yeah.
Fantastic. One concern is, again, as we try to suss out what's going to be happening this season, what is Brown's piece in this offense? They added...
Threw me for a loop when they signed him. Had no idea. Thought they had a great 1-2 punch going, a little thunder and lightning, a little earth and moon going on with Matthews and Woodhead. Now, what does Donald Brown do?
That's enough to give me pause. If I have 2 running back spots and no flex, and I've got someone better than Ryan Matthews, I might wait a week to see what's going on with that.
I'm going to push it against Arizona because I think they are a weakened rush defense, and I think instead of pressing the issue against Patrick Peterson, even though they don't have the Honey Badger back there, I think it's going to be a run-first attack this week that they're going to go with and set up the pass. Just saying.
Interesting.
Watched a couple games in my day.
Okay, all right. I have not watched a couple games. I'm just going strictly off stats. Never seen a football game.
You're doing well. I got to say, you're doing well.
Eventually, I'd like to see a football game.
Hang tight.
Toby Gerhart. I like Toby Gerhart. Which is to say, I like the fact that he's going to be getting at least 18, probably more like 22 touches per game. And I'm excited. I'm excited that I don't own him, but I'm happy for owners that have him to get those 45 yards per game and maybe a touchdown.
Do you think Toby Gerhart is going to be one of those guys? You know, every year, when we need a good nickname for this kind of person, for this player, the guys that you had no interest in the draft and you passed over at least 2 times in the draft, and then they ended up doing better than you thought and you had regret about not picking them. I think Gerhart could become one of those guys this year because he was available 3, 4, sometimes even the 5th round, and you're like, oh, Toby Gerhart, Jacksonville, stay away. Maybe he's going to become 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. Maybe.
I don't know about 1,000 yards.
That's only like 62 and a half yards a game over 16 games.
I'll still take the under.
All right.
Steven Jackson versus New Orleans. I don't think I'd even put him in top 14. I think.
I got him at 19, actually. That was a little mistake on the submission.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Zach Stacy is 14. Steven Jackson is 19.
I'll buy Zach Stacy at 14. Rashad Jennings against the Detroit. This is going to be, I said litmus test already, a litmus test for the Detroit defensive line. Of course, Ndamukong Suh, one of the best players, defensive linemen in the NFL. But there's a big question with Nick Fairley in a contract year. Is he going to step up and make the Lions a better than league average defensive line?
They seem to continue to always invest in offense, and they certainly did with the head coach that they brought into Detroit. But they've got the talent there, at least in the front 7, to be able to get the job done in Detroit. To me, this is really not even so much a referendum on Detroit's defense as it is on the Giants' offense. I think it's going to take them 5 to 6 weeks to figure it out. And they're going to have to rely on Rashad Jennings and the young offensive line because Eli Manning could not complete a sentence, a puzzle, or a Mad Lib, let alone a forward pass in the preseason, and he looks terrible.
I would love it. I just love so much that the Giants are like, well, he won us 2 Super Bowls. What are we supposed to do?
Look, you tell me, okay, so maybe there's some bumps in the road on his way to Canton. So what? Hey, things happen, all right? But he's an immortal. IMMORDAL, immortal.
But yes, I do like Rashad Jennings starting him this year. I keep hearing like Andre Williams is going to get the goal line work. Tom Coughlin doesn't like playing rookies if he doesn't have to. And he's
a military guy. He looks at the owls like, yeah, earn your keep, Rook.
Yeah. So
he makes him clean the dishes.
I'm not saying that Andre Williams won't come on and eventually get goal line carries, but certainly not week 1. I like Rashad Jennings.
No, and Rashad Jennings proved to be just as effective last year, both from outside the 20, just as he did inside the 20/red zone/red area.
Yeah. I liked all those different terms.
Thank you.
Reggie Bush is. I'm still high on Reggie Bush. People have said terrible things about him over the years, largely because of fantasy football. Another 5% because of Kim Kardashian. But
That's true. You speak no lies. I've been high on Bush for years too.
Hey,
come on. Hey, how could you ever get tired of this, Bush Takashi? I put Bush and Bell together because. I think I can't. If I would be separating them at this point and putting like 2 or 3 spaces between them in the rankings, I feel as though it's kind of disingenuous because it would be arbitrary. We don't know how they're going to be employed yet. This is another Well, it's Monday Night Football, so you don't have a choice of which side of the sports bar to go to.
Yeah.
This is just main room, and thank God the Steelers fans left. So now we're main room, and we're looking at this game wondering, like, okay, is Reggie going to get more than just 5 screen passes? Is he going to get 8 or 9 handoff, or is it going to be all Bell and screen to Bush?
That's the thing is, and all it takes is that one successful screen pass to Bush that he breaks loose for 74 yards and a touchdown, and then that's a great start. And then Joique Bell's had games where he's like, oh, okay, so Joique Bell's just getting all the handoffs, and he has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and I probably should have gotten him instead of Reggie Bush. The Lions just name a starter. Let me know who's going to get the rock this week. That's all I want to know.
Don't to think that head coaches actually care about what we think. You know what? Not everyone in the NFL can be Justin Hunter. Not everyone can say, hey, thanks for drafting me. I appreciate your faith. Oh, and also, I had me on my fantasy team.
Yeah. Let's round out the top 20 here.
Okay.
Fred Jackson at Chicago.
That's actually Steven Jackson. But
right.
Either one. You could plug in one or the other. Again, sorry for the clerical errors. Could be Steven Jackson. I only say that just because you can run a little bit on New Orleans. I want to see if he blows out his hamstring again week 1. If that is the case, hello, Devonta Freeman.
I have week 4 in the office pool.
Do you really?
For blowing out his hamstring.
I should have gotten in on that. Yeah, everyone is dying for the Devonta Freeman era to begin.
He's third string. He's still got to get past Jacquizz Rodgers.
I know. I can't believe Jacquizz Rodgers is still second. He's so slight.
Yeah.
And then number 20, Shane Vereen. I still think Ridley's going to get the ball, but they're going to try and get it in Vereen's hands, I think, 12 to 15 times a game.
Yeah.
Interesting to note, though, last year in the December contest, Patriots at Miami, which Miami pulled out 24-20. Vereen was coming off an enormous week. He had just come back after he broke his hand.
I recall it. He had like 10 catches or something that week.
And then the next week in Miami, the entire defensive game plan was stopping Vereen, and I would not be surprised again if they just basically set up that perimeter and told Brady, okay, beat us 15 yards downfield. That's going to put a lot of the short receivers to the test this week for him.
All right. So there you go. There's our running backs. Do we leave out anyone of note?
I really don't think so. There's can you think of anyone that jumps to mind that's going to be like an RB2 this week? Le'Veon Bell was earlier. I'm not getting in. I'm not doing LeGarrette Blount. Ben Tate, not going to start. I'm not excited. Not excited to start Ben Tate in Pittsburgh with that one-dimensional offense.
I'm going to tell you who you forgot, and I'm not sure if you'd like to resign on the spot or just get fired.
Okay.
Doug Martin is not on this list.
What are you talking about?
Is he not?
Doug Martin is certainly on this list. Yeah, there it is right there. ALFREDMORRIS. Doug Martin. Look, I told you I did this from my bathtub. These are bathtub rankings. If you go to bathtubrankings.com, it leads you oddly enough to the White House, but whitehouse.com is an adult site. Just FYI.
So let's go ahead. Let's dedicate 1 minute to Doug Martin.
Not loving Doug Martin against Carolina.
Again, very, very tough front seven. We know this. A little bit weakened this year by injuries, but they did add Logan Mankins, of course, to the interior line.
I had no idea, said the Patriots fan who sits across from you.
Yes. Yeah. I think that Doug Martin is obviously a must start this year. If you picked him up in your second round, early in the third, you're starting Doug Martin.
All right, but if you invested a third round pick on him, yes, you're probably going to start him this week. I just want you to know, I'm not crazy about him.
All right, you don't have to be.
I don't have to be.
All right, let's talk about wide receivers.
Fine.
Moving on to the wide receivers. Number 1 is someone named Megatron. Is that his birth name?
Yes, it is actually his birth name, but his nickname is Calvin.
Calvin
Johnson.
Oh. After Calvin and Hobbes.
I think it's fun sometimes to actually give people their. I like going by the nicknames. I would allow the same way they do in the NBA when you can do a King James or you can do the Truth.
Yeah.
I would love Calvin Johnson to be able to wear Megatron on his back.
A little XFL touch.
Totally.
So listen, there's a whole bunch of obvious starts at the top of these rankings. Calvin Johnson, Demaryius Thomas. I think Demaryius Thomas is going to he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this year.
At the end of the season, I agree.
Demaryius Thomas, I think, and he's going to have a fantastic day against the Indianapolis Colts, who are hot garbage.
They are a pile. They're picnic trash.
Hot garbage led by Andrew Luck, which elevates them to mere picnic refuse.
Yeah, is that? Yeah, but like a community park picnic.
Yeah, sure, sure.
You know, like a couple of napkins and like one of those little fry boats.
Like you go to the park on Monday morning after like a weekend of barbecues, and you know, like the rats scurry away, but it's still like there's still some good chicken bones there.
Right, but it's like there's the garbage can and like it mushroomed and overflowed, and there's a couple of bags around the side of it. It's like, oh, you guys tried to pick up your trash.
Yeah, sure.
There was just so much of it.
That's your Indianapolis Colts, 2014.
There it is. In a nutshell.
Back to the wide receivers. Dez at number 3. Brandon Marshall versus Buffalo, I love. Julio Jones versus New Orleans. I see you're buying into the. I think this is again another
Hard Knocks effect.
Hard Knocks effect.
Listen, when he's healthy, he's nearly impossible to cover, and I know that they've got an improved secondary, and it's the Rob Ryan defense, and they're probably going to key on him. Maybe that even makes it a little bit more of a Roddy White week. Probably more so in terms of yardage and PPR, but Julio constantly has that deep threat potential. Look, you know, when he was healthy, when he didn't have a broken foot and they weren't the sad sack, burnt, scorched earth Falcons of last year, he led the league in touched, you know, like yards. The last year was Deshaun Jackson who had the longest average catch. The year before that, of course, it was Julio Jones. Perhaps he could return to that.
I would love to see that. I would like to see things. I would like to have him have a healthy season. A little worried about that. I'm also a little bit concerned about the improved New Orleans secondary. Kenny Vaccaro back from injury. Jarris Byrd. I'm a little bit worried about that for old Julio and to a lesser extent Roddy White. Moving along, Alshon Jeffrey must start. A.J. Green must start, even against a tough Baltimore D. And Antonio Brown, Hayden Island, but still a must start because he's the only wide receiver that you can really trust in Pittsburgh land right now.
Yeah, Marcus Wheaton there. Marcus Wheaton has weight, and tell me.
There's a lot of people that have, I've seen some fantasy drafts where like people are grabbing Marcus Wheaton around the same time where they're going for the other top rookies or top rookie wide receivers like your Sammy Watkins, your Brandon Cooks, Mike Evans. And I'll see Marcus Wheaton go at the end of that run and I'll be like, I would like to see a little bit more out of him.
Yeah, you know, you could have had Terrence Williams.
Yeah. Again, a second-year receiver, of course. But I think that's just what I've seen from fantasy drafts. Andre Johnson against the Washington football team, yes, a start. Michael Crabtree against the Dallas Cowboys. Is it a trash fire or garbage?
What, no, that's the Dallas Cowboys defense it's a tire fire that's been airlifted into a dumpster fire.
And the helicopter catches fire and crashes into it.
On the way up, like in the Matrix, like and then
Most of what we talk about is dumpster versus trash fires on the show. This is
classic matchup.
The trash dumpster. Welcome to the trash fire room.
Yeah, no, the Cowboys. Listen, they have two. The funny thing is, they've got. He's in his third year. The cornerback Morris Claiborne out of LSU has yet to live up to his potential, and Brandon Carr has not even played up to close to the 5-year, $50 million deal he got to come over from the Chieftains of Kansas City. And they also lost. Oh, and Skandrick is out this week because he took some mollies that Wes Welker loaned him, allegedly. And their best coverage linebacker is done for the season as of this past June. So yeah, throw the ball against Dallas.
So let's move on to the bottom half of the top 20 here. Michael Floyd, I like as a start against the Chargers. 12 and 13, a couple of questions because you've got Jordy Nelson going up against the old Legion of Boom. And Keenan Allen getting Patrick Peterson treatment, we assume. Probably.
It's pretty safe to assume that he'll get the PP patrol. It doesn't sound... Today's show brought to you by grown-ups, one of which actually has a child. You're on the PP patrol. Here's the thing. I really just wish, not for nothing, but if we've got Revis Island, then we need Hayden Territory, we need Peterson World. Every one of them deserves their own unique nickname. We'll get to that. It'll be on the blog. None of you will read it. Keenan Allen, don't forget, does his best work from 20 yards within. He's not a downfield threat. He did spend the offseason working on his downfield speed. I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to pull off at least just a couple of slants, a couple of outs. Makes him, he's still the #1 look for him right now. Okay, maybe it's going to be more of a tight end week for Philip Rivers.
And a great red zone target. Like even so, I think he's surpassed Antonio Gates and Ladarius Green as the red zone. Philip Rivers is looking for someone in the back of the end zone. That person is usually Keenan Allen.
Remember that game last year against Denver? 2 catches, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and fun ones to watch too.
Very fun.
Leaping over gentlemen. So you got Marcus Colston against the Falcons defense. Yes, Roddy White I think is going to be he's the Falcons 1A, and he is, as we talk about like the hard knocks effect, I think Roddy White is someone who actually earns it. He's just an old veteran who's like having fun during training camp, and because he knows he's serious about his job, he gets it done, he's having fun out there. I like Roddy White a lot.
Scrappy. He's got veteran poise and presence.
Yes, he does. I think Jeremy Maclin might be a shade too low against Jacksonville.
Interesting.
I think the only thing keeping Jeremy Maclin from having an excellent game against Jacksonville is the Eagles scoring too many points too early.
That could be the case, but again, since this is wait and show me week 1 here in the 2014 NFL season and how that applies to fantasy football, do we, of course, I'm sure Chip Kelly and all of his fancy signs and his weird little sideline gestures and whatnot and his up-tempo offense is probably going to game plan and have a unique plan for every given week. What's he going to do this week? Is he going to run? Is he going to throw a lot of screen passes and employ the old McCoy and Sproles action? How about Ertz?
I think he may take off his shirt and distract the defense that way.
That would be absolutely horrifying. I just like watching to see which celebrity's giant face from the sideline as he holds up this week.
You know what so let's get down to the bottom of the 20 here. I really like Terrence Williams against the Niners. Again, that weakened secondary. I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout, the Niners-Cowboys. So Terrence Williams is good, but there's 2 names missing here that I saw usually in the top 20 of wide receivers in fantasy drafts. Those names are Cordero Patterson. He's playing at St. Louis this week, and Percy Harvin.
Right. Now, Percy Harvin you can make an argument for. I just flat out think Cordero Patterson's going to get roughed up this week. I don't see a very good week for the Vikings going into St. Louis. That front 7 has teeth. They're going to play them uptight, close. It's going to be pushy. It's going to be shovey. I know that's not a word, but it applies in fantasy because it's technically not even real. It's fantasy after all. I can't imagine this is not the week that you're looking for Cordero Patterson to just catch long bombs from Matt Castle. I know you spent a 4th-round draft pick on him. Maybe
I did not.
Maybe a flex. You, the royal you, all of you out there listening or watching. I'm just not crazy. I mean, look, it's a 2 to 3 wide receiver setup. You probably have better options.
Yes,
should.
I think if Cordell Patterson is going to make an impact this week, he's going to need to get 30 to 40 yards on the ground via end arounds or a bubble screen that ends up breaking out.
Didn't touch the ball on the ground just like Percy Harvin did in the entire preseason.
Yeah, I think, well, again, the coaches aren't going to show their hands with that.
Oh, here, what do you think I should do with these 4 kings? Is this good? No, it's a guy.
I do think that Percy Harvin should be in the top 20 as I'm beating the drum for Russell Wilson. I'm going to do the same thing with Percy Harvin. As long as he's healthy, I think you're looking at a top 15 wide receiver.
Yeah.
And yes, I know the Seahawks don't throw the ball enough. I think that an additional, the way that they've employed him in a short passing game, getting him the ball into his hands immediately after the snap with 2 blockers ahead of him, getting him in motion, he's just going to pick up some garbage yards. Again, it's going to be great yards for the Seahawks. They'll do the on first downs when they don't run. They'll throw it to Percy Harvin, get a quick 6-7 yards. Or if a jet sweep that gets him 15, and he's just going to accumulate those yards a little bit early. It's going to open up the Seahawks offense, and so it's going to come down to, does he get in the end zone? And I think that's going to be the biggest question to whether Percy Harvin's a fantasy success this year is, does he have 6 touchdowns or does he have 12 touchdowns at the end of the year?
He's a matchup nightmare. Week 1, of course, that's not exactly the fleetest of foot of linebacking cores, so he might be able to work his magic on the interior and to the outside. He does return kicks. I think what we saw in the Super Bowl was what got fantasy people as well as actual fans of that particular football team most excited. Ooh, look he's doing a little bit of everything. He's returning kicks for touchdowns. He's creating momentum on his own. He's catching passes. That's what they saw in 2012 before, of course, he was dealt and then hurt, and then they replaced him with a slighter and weirder named version of himself in Cordell Patterson. I'm higher on Percy Harvin this week than I am in Patterson. One other guy of note, I had no other running backs I wanted to add, even with the Doug Martin omission. Cecil Shorts, in case you need it. That is a historically bad Philadelphia secondary, and again, they're going to be down. Could be slinging a lot of garbage throws his way.
Yeah, and Cecil Shorts has been I have a kind of a rule of like don't ever play a Raider unless a bye week like demands that you do so.
That's a fancy, but yet at the same time none too convoluted and logical rule.
And that doesn't quite apply to the Jaguars. Like even though the Jaguars are just as much of an awful team as the Raiders are, the Jaguars managed to create some worth in fantasy. Maurice Jones-Drew throughout the years.
For the first time in years, the team may not actually be as bad as those two-tone helmets.
I like the two-tone helmets.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
Stop currying favor.
I don't. I do like the pool in the stadium.
The pool in the stadium. It's great. Now, finally, you don't even have to finish the game. You can just drown yourself.
I believe that's what they do at Bills games, actually. That's outside the stadium.
That's outside the stadium.
Oh, man.
And by drown themselves, you mean drink beer and order prostitutes. Hey, tight ends.
Yes.
It's Buffalo. Did you think there's anything else to do? Good afternoon, Western New York. Let's talk about tight ends.
That was a silky smooth transition.
Thank you very much.
So yes, Jimmy Graham is, of course, your number one tight end this week and every week.
Could be the number one player in all fantasy this week because there's nobody on that field, defensively speaking, for Atlanta. It's a dome. He's comfortable in them. That can keep up with him.
I agree. Julius Thomas, of course, is a must-start at tight end. I think the big question with tight end rankings this year is going to be, of course, Rob Gronkowski. Week 1, 9 months removed from ACL surgery. He's back on the field for week 1. All right, make your case, Patriots fan.
Well, Gronk said he was ready to go and he'd be out there. And, of course, Belichick, in quintessential Belichickian form, made sure to come out and say, oh, you know, my job is to rain in the parade and there's a party and it needs pooping on, so it is what it is, and I'll decide when Rob's ready to go. But here's the... If he says he's healthy, if he says he's ready, obviously Gronk has worked hard enough. He's pumped up. He was super cautious last year when his dad actually helped keep him back several more weeks so the forearm could heal. But now he's coming out and knowing the protocol is not to say anything, and he's saying, I'm ready, I'll be out there. He'll be out there.
He's had so much experience being injured.
Oh, by the way, he has. Also, when Gronk says, I'll be ready, I'll be out there, that is the most words that he knows. Those are the longest sentences he can string together. So you should be impressed at that, if nothing else.
He then added, Hodor. All right. Let's talk about Jordan Cameron. Sure, you're starting him. Jason Witten against San Francisco. The Niners defense missing Navarro Bowman. I think Jason Witten's a good start. Greg Olsen at Tampa Bay. I like Greg Olsen this week, even though Tampa Bay, I like their defense a lot. I like Greg Olsen this week just because he is the only receiver who was on the team last year. Sorry, not receiver, person catching passes.
Pass-catching person.
Who was on the Panthers last year.
He was the only PCP. He was the only pass-catching person. Do you, by the way, realize that within the top 6 of tight ends, we have 2 teams who actually have a tight end as their number 1 option? Jordan Cameron is by far a number 1 option because you're not going to tell me that the ghost of Miles Austin or Andrews, don't confuse me with Sophie B. Hawkins. Yeah. Damn, I wish I was your wide receiver too. Jordan Cameron and Greg Olsen are the number 1 pass-catching persons on their team, and that's in the top 6 of all tight ends. That's pretty weak.
You could also make that argument for Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, you could. Also, but he doesn't know what the word argument means.
I think that you might have Vernon Davis at Dallas a little bit low with the Cowboys defense.
But who would you bump him up over? Olsen? I'm not putting him over Witten.
Yeah.
Because this is the week that Jason Witten can take advantage of the fact that Patrick Willis can't defend the entire field himself.
True.
And there's no Navarro Bowman.
Listen, but as we talk about these rankings, I'm going to incorporate a question that we got from one of our viewers.
I'm excited for this.
Carlos hit us up on Twitter to say, being that the Eagles are playing the Jaguars, should I start Zach Ertz over Julius Thomas? And you have Zach Ertz as the number 9 play versus Jacksonville. I think that's getting too cute for week 1. Julius Thomas is he's getting his last year he got 7 targets per game, turned it into I think he had 12 touchdowns last season.
Early bloomer though, early bloomer.
Again, this is easy early in the season. Stick with Julius Thomas. Let's see what Zach Ertz is about. I suspect that he is going to be heavily involved in the Eagles' offense this year. But let's go ahead and play. Let's slow play this one.
Let's wait and see if a lot of people are right in that Zach Ertz could be the 2014 version of 2011 Rob Gronkowski, like, ooh, showed some flash and promise
in his rookie season,
and then just blew the doors and lids right off the joint afterwards.
And that's what Ertz has said in interviews. He says that he wants to be like the best tight end in the NFL. He's got that. He's got Rob Gronkowski in his sights in that regard, and he wants to take that step forward this year. I want to actually see it before I go ahead and give him that nod over Julius Thomas.
I think a lot of teams in the NFC East, their defenses are going to be in the Ertz locker.
Nope. Not
How
even
about Ertz
not even reacting to that.
Ertz
Not reacting to it. You've also got Kyle Rudolph, Charles Clay, Martellus Bennett on this list. I think they're all good plays. Let's talk. I have one question here. Mm-hmm. We've got, before we move on to defenses, Antonio Gates and Ladarius Green are 14, 16 on your rankings. Mm-hmm. And again, this is an annoying thing where Ladarius Green is waiting in the wings, immensely talented, but still quite not polished enough to take the job from Antonio Gates, who's slowly turning into dust.
He just won't die, though.
I will say I'm very curious to see. Last year we had a standing policy that if you could find a tight end starting against the Cardinals, you played him because they just gave up a touchdown to a tight end every single week. And I want to see if with their inside linebacking core taking a step back this year, do they continue to? Does that continue to be a weak spot for the Cardinals defense?
Let me put it this way: this sort of tight end conundrum right here. This is the Reggie Bush and Joique Bell of tight ends.
Yeah.
I know they're both probably actually going to merit being fantasy starters, and each put up great numbers. Irrespective of the other. I'm not sure if that's a word, but I felt like using it on this broadcast. I'm sorry about that. Antonio Gates just refuses to go down. Still has a little bit of that shiny apple of Phillip Rivers' eye, especially in the red zone, all over the field. Ladarius Green may be more of a red zone threat if Keenan Allen is not available.
Yeah.
Again, what if this week, I'm just going to put it out there, you put one at time. Maybe you're the guy that has both because you went for a handcuff situation and you got an edge over your league. What if this week maybe you don't love your flex options? You could go tight end one, and if it's a wide receiver, running back, tight end, flex kind of situation, start them both.
Yeah. I maybe. We'll see.
Desperate times? Hello, desperate measures here.
One final note on tight end. I think that you have underestimated Travis Kelce of the Chiefs. I saw a little bit of Chiefs preseason action because I desperately am lacking in hobbies. And this is the Chiefs actually put the brakes on going after more wide receiving options in the offseason because they have a lot of belief in Kelce's big playability. I think that we're going to see him emerge as one of the bigger targets that actually siphons a couple looks away from Jamal Charles.
Why? You're not a huge believer in Donnie Avery?
You know what? I've been burned by Dwayne Bowe too many times.
Oh, God. No, I mean, anything is better than Donnie Avery or the ghost of Dwayne Bowe at this point. I agree. I'd like him to show him, okay, maybe you could bump him up over Tyler Eifert, Garrett Graham, but I wouldn't want to put him any higher. And he could be somebody that we start flirting with up in Zach Ertz territory sooner rather than later.
Agreed. Okay, let's close things out with defense before we get to your questions. Your number one defense is Seattle. I'm not going to be the person to argue with that about you. I do think that Green Bay will have a better showing than the 8 sacks they gave up and 12 points they scored the last time they went to Seattle. But if you've got the Seattle defense, you start them.
Of course.
St. Louis versus Minnesota, very, very high on that front four. I see.
I am a firm believer, given some of the other matchups as well. Not to mention the fact that this is a pretty one-dimensional Minnesota team that comes in to the Edward Jones Dome on this particular given kickoff Sunday. I'm just not loving it. I mean, it's going to be Adrian Peterson all day.
Yep.
Very turnover and sack-friendly team last year, too.
I think you might have the 49ers a little bit high at 3, just because the Cowboys do have a high-powered offense, and they are a little bit weakened. But I like the move of Lions against the Giants. I think that's a good investment in Eli Manning.
Hey, listen, Eli's Bakery is not going to be open Monday. No turnovers. Get them elsewhere.
As we look to capitalize on error-prone quarterbacks, I do think that you have Cincinnati a little bit too low at 14. This is a proven defense that's gotten better. It's gotten healthier. The last season they played Baltimore twice, as they usually do, of course.
Yes.
The first game, 2 interceptions, 5 sacks, and a lost fumble for the Ravens. The second game, the Ravens gave up 3 interceptions, 2 sacks, and one of those interceptions led to a defensive touchdown. The Bengals get the job done against the the Ravens, or rather, the Bengals defense gets the job done against Joe Flacco mostly. And I think that there's room to argue that the Ravens defense is also an excellent start against Andy Dalton for very similar reasons. The game that Flacco threw 3 picks against the Bengals, Dalton topped them by throwing 4 interceptions.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. That was the anything you can do, I can do worse. I do see, like again, I said I don't see massive improvement from the Baltimore offense, and it's going to take a while for it to fully mesh and or intermesh, if you will. But at the same time, I don't see them performing as poorly. Last year was just one of those classic Super Bowl swoons. Too much money to Flacco, not enough weapons, or Marlon Jones or Marlon whatever. That guy, the free agent wide receiver, was their wide receiver too. Now you add Steve Smith, Tiny Steve Smith from Carolina. Now you've got a fully healthy Dennis Pitta. It's going to make just enough of a difference not to put together one of those absolute craptaculars. Would I still say that I would bump them up a few? Perhaps. More than valid point, sir. However, I wouldn't push them past, let's say, I don't know, I wouldn't know if I'd push them past Pittsburgh against Brian Hoyer, Cleveland, and Ben Tate. I don't know if I'd push them past Carolina. Maybe over Carolina, perhaps.
Yeah. I also think that, as I touted in the pre-draft show, I do like Cleveland's defense this year. I think they're about appropriate placed at number 10 against Pittsburgh. Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of surprises. I think you may have gone a little bit low with the Jets going up against a rookie quarterback starting his first game. Start the Jets defense, man. Come on.
Yeah, I know, but there's just no. You and I both were recently in for cornerback auditions for the Jets.
It's true. It's true. I didn't train for my 40 enough. I didn't have the quick hit movement, but the dream lives.
I got winded, but they appreciated my snacks. So
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, look, at this point, there's no such thing as a 2D league. You're probably not, at this point now, you don't have a bye coming up for several weeks, so you're probably not carrying a second defense.
No, you shouldn't.
So this is really almost about the top 15. The bottom 5 just happen to be throw-ins. This is us meeting our, you know what I was doing? I was just being an obnoxious meter maid at this point and just meeting a quota, threw in 5 defenses at the bottom. That's kind of where it went.
See, I like the Jets as a top 15D, this week especially, against the Raiders West Coast team. Playing a 1 o'clock Eastern game, rookie quarterback, first start. Yeah, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Jets, even with the questionable secondary.
That's what it means to be green.
There you go. There's our discussion.
Exciting week 1
of defenses. We've got a couple minutes to answer viewer questions, or reader questions, or listener questions, interactor questions. I'm going to hit up, let's see, we got one from Twitter. This is from Death by Rhapsody. More likely to have a receiving touchdown, Roddy White, Donnie Avery, Mike Evans, or Mike Williams?
Mike Williams from Buffalo. I'm going to go ahead and just knock it. I'm just going to rule him out because I have no confidence in E.J. Manuel.
I don't understand why he's even on a fantasy team.
I have no idea, but that's either a 16-team league or just a terrible draft.
Yeah.
I would either go with Mike Evans or the aforementioned, not Donnie Avery. I would go with Roddy White.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's Mike Evans or Roddy White. I might even, again, if it comes down to a start, I'm starting Roddy White over Mike Evans this week just because he's the better play. For saying scoring a touchdown, I might go Mike Evans just because I've got the big holes in the Panthers secondary.
Right, and the big receiver too.
Yes. Mighty Feckler says Colston, Sproles, Steven Jackson. I can start 2. Which 2? Let's say it together. Colston, Sproles, Steven Jackson. Let's just pick our 2 at the same time. Colston and Sproles. There we go. That's an easy one.
Sounds like the name of a fancy deli. Colston and Sproles.
Colston Sproles.
Colston Sproles.
Let's see. Here we go. This is from, I think, PDS. Which D do you like with Philadelphia, Detroit, New York Jets, and Pittsburgh available?
Okay. Philadelphia, no.
Detroit you liked a lot because of the Giants?
I do like Detroit because of the fact that I know there's that wild inconsistency in the questions about New York. Plus, they could be a turnover factory, young offensive line. I'm leaning towards Detroit with Pittsburgh maybe nipping at their heels.
I sold out on the Jets last discussion, and I feel like I might have to back the Jets just because I do like the Pittsburgh defense playing at home against the Browns. Brian Hoyer, he's not going to do anything. The running game isn't a big plus for them. But I'm going to go Detroit or New York Jets on that one.
It's going to be I will bet even more than my bottom dollar that it will be an incredibly conservative game plan from Cleveland. So not going to be turnover prone, maybe a couple of sacks, just low scoring. But the greatest risk reward there for fantasy boom and bust is definitely Detroit because of the fact that, look, either Eli's just going to get it, I hate to say it, I kind of doubt it, or they're going to come out and just have it was bad on the road last year and a bad preseason as well.
Let me ask you a question.
Please.
You pay for the Red Zone channel, yes?
I do. It comes with my cable.
How much more would you pay to have no AFC North games, intra-division games shown on your Red Zone channel?
How much more would I show? Well, I would easily pay an extra $2 a month.
Yeah.
I'd pay $1 a Sunday.
Yeah, I would shell out like an extra $5 to not see any of Ravens Bengals and no Steelers Browns. I'd just be happier. Those are just in the jumble of the early games anyway. Ugh. I don't want to see that.
You know what? Actually, tell you what, I'll pay $5 if I don't have to have any AFC South.
Ooh.
I don't need any of that either.
See, I think the Texans.
The Titans.
I think the Texans and Colts are interesting enough for me.
Okay, but they've got enough. They have enough national games that I'll see them there. I don't need them in my red zone.
Fair. All right, let's move on. Kaiser Rybread. That's a good name. Kaiser Rybread says, I've got Pierre Thomas, Joique Bell, Terrence Williams, and Golden Tate. Pierre Thomas, Joique Bell, Terrence Williams, Golden Tate. Available for one flex spot in a half PPR league.
Ooh,
I'm leaning Thomas. Is this a smart plan?
Mm-hmm.
That's tough.
Joique Bell, it's the half-point PPR league thing that threw me there.
Yeah.
Joique Bell, should be my RB2 in the first place. This guy might have a stacked team. This is a great bench.
Or it's like an 18 league.
Good draft, Kaiser Soze. Well done.
Yeah.
I was going to say Terrence Williams
I would go Terrence Williams too.
I trust no part of that San Francisco secondary, and even if they do roll double and triple coverage over to Dez, Terrence Williams proved more than capable of winning battles in one-on-one.
And again, Terrence Williams is that sophomore wideout that he's taking that next step.
The leap.
That he takes that leap. And again, Pierre Thomas and Joique Bell, excellent options. Excellent options. But there's too much of a boom or bust factor.
Right.
Like Pierre Thomas is all good. It's all coming down to, is he catching enough passes? And Joique Bell, does he get touches or is it Reggie Bush? I think that Terrence Williams is just the safer bet right there.
Yeah, this guy has regular M&Ms, peanut M&Ms. He's got pretzel M&Ms and peanut butter. He doesn't have to deal with any of that like holiday or coconut crap. These are 4 excellent choices. I would eat any of those as well. But I go Terrence Williams, you say Pierre Thomas.
No, I'm saying Terrence Williams
You are as well.
Yeah.
Good to have you here, pal.
Thanks for joining me. Justin View says, which 2 running backs should I start? Arian Foster, Doug Martin, Chris Johnson, Toby Gerhart. Again, I won't say this is a stack team, but a lot of interesting options. I got to say Arian Foster and Doug Martin are the 2 to play.
Oh, sure. Chris Johnson, week 1. Don't know how they're going to use him.
Chris Johnson any week?
Chris Johnson any week. I mean, is there anything about the Jets' offensive line that says, quick, start him, start me?
Chris Johnson's sole fantasy purpose is to be on your fantasy team and then to make you hate him so much that you bench him. And then when you bench him, that's when he scores 2 touchdowns and runs for 120 yards.
That's his 197-yard, 3-touchdown week. Which, of course, one of the things everyone always forgets about Chris Johnson is that whenever it's like, hey, look, CJ2K last year, and that virus did nothing to anybody. But CJ2K, he had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. Yeah, he had 2 games where he rushed for 407 yards and got 6 of those 9 touchdowns. That's how every single one of his years works. And why would he do nothing but that with the Jets this year? I think Chris Ivory's going to end up being the best running back on the Jets.
I hope so.
I did just say that. I can't take it back.
I'm sure Chris Johnson is a nice person. I want good things to happen to him.
Sure.
I just, he has poisoned the fantasy well.
One too many times.
Yeah.
One too many times.
Maybe 3 too many times. Here's an interesting one. Likender says, Rivers or Romo this week?
Oh, that is a tough question.
Philip Rivers has got the Cardinals defense. The Cardinals are playing in Arizona, so they have no home field advantage because they're Arizona. Tony Romo playing at home against that Niners defense.
Romo.
I'll tell you, Romo's higher on your rankings, and I agree with you on that one.
On one of my teams, the league where I happened to win this trophy right here last year, I have Matt Ryan and Romo. Romo was just sitting around in the 8th round, 8-9 round area. Had to grab him just
free money. That's free money.
It's
Nick.
exactly how I looked at it. It was just $7 sitting in the parking lot. I grabbed it. I didn't ask if it belonged to anyone. I was like, this is my $7. I'm gonna go spend that on cheap beer.
I find it very strange that you found a bundle of 7 ones or a 5 and 2 ones together, and not just a single large bill.
Would you believe it or not? I actually did find $11 in a parking lot last night. Yeah, and I spent it on on beer.
Congrats.
Thank you that was an excellent moment in my life.
I'm a little bit jealous.
But yeah, so I'm going to go with Romo over Rivers just because I do see them throwing the ball a lot, and that San Francisco secondary is much to the chagrin of the young man who ushered these papers into the studio with the questions, a boy by the name of Alex. To his dismay, that San Francisco defense is not what it is cracked up to be.
Oof, man. Painful but true.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's my life.
So let's see. Here we go. Standard scoring, no PPR, Shane Vereen, or Golden Tate?
Shane Vereen or Golden Tate?
This is from Sevchild.
Sevchild.
It's not important. Vereen or Tate?
Oh, that person takes so many selfies with a laptop computer. Sevchild, Golden Tate, or Shane Vereen? I'm going to go with Shane Vereen, even though he is the greater PPR option, just because he may have the accumulated yardage.
I think that I'm with you on this one. I like Golden Tate a lot this year, but the Giants reinvested a lot into their secondary. We could see Seahawk on Seahawk, ex-Seahawk versus ex-Seahawk with Golden Tate with Walter Thurmond on him. Very capable cornerback.
Probably DRC going over to Megatron, put the safety over the top.
Yep. And so, listen, Golden Tate's a very, very good wide receiver. I think he's going to do way better than Nate Burleson ever did for the Lions.
And usually the number 2 in this Lions offense now, we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like with Jim Caldwell. If anything, it should probably improve, and he may actually be able to take some of those takeaways away from Stafford. We don't know. It's a good function, the number 2 in this offense, but I still believe that Vereen's probably just going to have more touches. You won't get the points for him, but he'll probably have more yardage.
I'm with you on that. All right, we got time for one more question. Let's
at the wire.
Oh, wrap things up. Let's go. Here's an interesting one.
All right.
MJ Worm 84 says thoughts on T.Y. Hilton versus Riley Cooper as a flex.
Ooh, that's a good
12-team league with Alshon and Jordy as my starters. Brag. Don't brag. I just want the question. 12-team league. I've got Alshon and Jordy as my starters. Listen, the question is T.Y. Hilton versus Riley Cooper as a flex. T.Y. Hilton, of course, going up against the Broncos in Denver. Riley Cooper playing at home against Jacksonville.
We don't know what we're going to get out of Riley Cooper because we don't know what we're going to see from Philadelphia's attack against Jacksonville. They could come at them a number of ways. We do know Andrew Luck is going to have to throw the ball a lot to try to keep pace with Peyton just completely having his way up, down, left, and right against the Indianapolis defense. T.Y. Hilton, even with a rejuvenated and rebuilt Reggie Wayne, in a landslide.
I agree with you. T.Y. Hilton is more reliably getting looks from Andrew Luck. Riley Cooper, while he had some fantastic games last year, was very much like a deep threat, and that's that he was getting the long balls from Nick Foles, and I think that is something we're not going to see as much of this year.
Even if Jeremy Maclin does prove up that gimpy, there's still the rookie wide receiver coming in, and also the Zach Ertz experiment could emerge, so we're not sure what we're going to get there. Book a night at the Hilton.
All right, folks, that is week 1. Week 1.
That's an awful lot.
Oh, welcome back, NFL. Week 1 Fantasy War Room Live has concluded. I'm Matt Ufford. Find me on Twitter, at Matt Ufford. That's Nick Stevens. He's at Ahoy Nick Stevens. Thank you for watching live. If you're on the SB Nation Live page, please stick around in the comments. Whatever questions you've got, we've got an excellent fantasy writer named Danny Kelly. He's going to answer your questions. If you happen to be watching a replay, thanks for watching. If you're on the podcast, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Football.
Hey, thanks for watching this SB Nation video. If you liked it, do us a solid and click that thumbs up button. And for more from SB Nation, subscribe to our channel. And while you're at it, how about watching one of these videos over here? Come on, what else are you doing today? Click it. Go.